Drea Humphrey here with Rebel News. And the last time I brought you a report from in front of BC's Chilliwack School Board's District 33's office, it was because a concerned father was mortified to have found a sexually explicit book that his child brought home from school. The book was so inappropriate that the father found himself worrying about having to hide his child's school literature from his younger children. But the problems here have gotten worse. And that's why last week, a group of concerned citizens, including grandparents, posed important questions at the board's latest meeting about explicit materials in schools, as well as safe spaces concerns for kids involving an overnight field trip that's coming up. They wanted to know where a child who they say is planning to attend that field trip and also identifies as a person of the opposite sex would be sleeping during the field trip. Now, they were asking a historically controversial board that's well known for trustees who have strong, passionate feelings for sexually explicit books for kids, and also normalizing that under the blanket term of diversity. Some of the older kids can easily find the vice chair, Dr. Karen Bodner, online swinging naked on a wrecking ball, sucking off a microscope, or I'm not even going to say what I see here.
Hello and welcome to Wild Sex. This is a course for nature lovers, animal lovers, students of biology, anyone who really just wants to expand their mind and learn about animals a little bit. Of course, learning about animals in a fabulous context, that is sex.
Even as very, very young children, Freud felt we were very influenced by our sexual urges and things that were already embedded within us.
Or maybe they can catch her discussing how male ducks gang rape female ducks on a TED Talk from 2013 because, she's an animal sex expert.
Now, if you've ever been out for a nice peaceful walk by the lake and happened to see some ducks having sex, you've undoubtedly been alarmed because it looks like gang rape. And quite frankly, that's exactly what it is. A group of males will grab a female, hold her down, and ballistically ejaculate their spiral-shaped penis into her corkscrew-shaped vagina over and over and over again.
And there's also the board Willow Reichelt. Well, she campaigned on keeping many of the books parents are concerned with in schools. And people actually came out and voted for her, at least the ones who did vote. I mean, her own husband is a school librarian in the district and seems to think that the board is doing a great job with their guidelines for library resources. So is it all that surprising then that some of the concerns these citizens raised were abruptly cut off by Reichelt, who dismissed them as potentially inflammatory or flat out false? But this is Rebel News, where we bring you the other side of the story thanks to all of the people who make that possible by clicking on that donate button when you go to our rebelnews.com website. And since these concerned parents and grandparents didn't feel they were heard at that board meeting, grab yourself a cup of coffee and sit down and listen to what they have to say.
I'm not here to suggest that any kind of books be taken or banned or anything like that. I'm just here as a concerned youth care worker who sees a lot of this is explicit in nature and are triggering some of our children and youth and they should not be exposed to our children or youth, especially children not mentally and emotionally capable of the content. Are we not here to protect our young people?
All right. So the first person I'm speaking to who was there that night is Trish. You're going to see more of me than I would like because, Trish, for work reasons, you're going to stay off camera. But you are a youth worker and you had some really powerful things to say. Mm-hmm. One of the things that stood out to me was when you were saying that some children are being almost re-victimized from the literature that's going on. Did you want to elaborate on that?
Sure. So we have lots of students that have had sexual trauma in the past. And, I was exposed to some of these books. People were showing me books online and it was kind of circulating. And that's where I just started to see some of them and read some of the content that were in the books. And my fear, so I don't know if, our kids that have been exposed to sexual trauma have had this happen to them or not. But my fear is that it could re-victimize them again because they are being exposed to things that are quite explicit in nature. especially regarding the sexualization of children.
And another thing that you brought up, which I thought was important for them to consider, is that some children are at different maturity levels or development levels to even be able to process this type of information. You deal with kids all over with all types of learning disabilities and challenges. So how does that play into it?
Again, yeah, that's kind of where my point was that we are dealing with kids with on the spectrum, kids that have neurological delays. And so, yeah, my concern is that some of the content within the books will not address the fact that they don't have the capabilities to be able to emotionally understand what is being put in front of them. So they didn't really give me a clear consensus, idea of where their policies are going to reflect this for our most vulnerable in the school system.
And is there anything else you think is really important, maybe even for parents to know in the Chilliwack School District?
Yeah, I think their voices need to be heard. I think we all need to speak up for our young people and know to protect them. I used to actually bring, the White Hatter into the school districts to do a whole presentation on the internet and how dangerous it was for the children, for children and youth and young teens to put too much information on the internet about themselves because of pedophiles and being able to be victims of sexual things or not even maybe sexual, just their information of being where they're going and things. And so, where is that? That is kind of where we were at, bring in people that teach children about sexual exploitation and teach children about too much information on the internet. So now we've got books that are coming into our schools that are supposed to be for a curriculum that is supposed to be about inclusivity, but at the same time, are they too much about giving that sort of that sexualization that we wanted to protect our students from?
All right, this is Teresa, as well as the founder of Action for Canada, Tanya Gahier. Both of you were also there that day, speaking. I guess what I also want to let people know is, because you wouldn't have been able to see this if you did already see footage from that board meeting, is that there was a bit of a gathering outside. Did you want to talk about that, Tanya?
Yeah, so quite a number of concerned parents and citizens had shown up, and then a gentleman came to the door and said that there was only going to be room for 15 people to be present in the actual room where they have the board meetings, and they insisted that they couldn't make room because this is where the cameras and the recording would take place. But it was interesting, once a handful of us got in there, a couple of us, 15 of us, that at the front row they had quite a number of seats for the Unions and Teachers Association to come in at the top of the hour and sit down like royalty.
And Teresa, you're a grandparent. You have some grandkids in the district, and you tried to get out a message. And so now you have your opportunity to really communicate what that message was that you were trying to communicate.
I appreciate that. I had concerns because they were talking about the policies. I wanted to know if there was a safety policy for overnight trips, for field trips and so forth for the kids. They couldn't give me a copy of the safety policy because it doesn't exist. So I thought, okay, the answers that I got when I had emailed them before weren't really answering my questions. So I thought, I'm going to come and I'm going to speak and I'm going to ask them as a board and see what we can work out or figure out or see what's going to happen. This field trip that's coming up is an overnight field trip for 2 nights. My question was, there is a child that identifies as the opposite sex, which is when they cut my mic off. Yeah. But I wanted to know this child, it would not be safe for this child, or it would concern me if this child was sleeping in a room with girls when they identify as a boy. Mm-hmm. What also would concern me is if this child would be in a boy's room, but is yet still a girl. Mm-hmm. So what happens with this child? How do we keep, or how does the school keep all of these children safe and secure? With SOGI being such a forefront and sexual orientation and gender identity is the focus in schools these days, these are questions that we have to ask. Yeah. I don't feel comfortable with my grandchildren sharing a room or a bed, because on this field trip, they are also sharing beds, which means now a child that identifies as the opposite sex will be sharing a bed with a child that is the opposite sex of what the other person feels like they are, right? Yeah, and it's all so confusing. So I have a genuine concern because there is nothing put in place that is going to make sure that all of these children are safe and secure. And they're all just children. So this has to be addressed. But the board has shut us down every time we've tried to ask any questions.
My first concern is regarding an overnight field trip coming up in which there are students that identify as the opposite sex attending.
Sorry, just to interrupt, that's not on the agenda. We're speaking about items that are on the agenda.
Is it not a policy? I thought you were rewriting all the policies.
No, the agenda was posted online, so we're speaking about items that are on this agenda, so that is not one of them.
Basically, anything I wanted to say today is not going to. When can I come to speak
email
about
the
it?
trustees at any point.
I have
about your
emailed
issues.
you,
Yeah.
and you responded,
Yeah.
but I didn't get the answers that I was hoping for.
Well, if you have further questions, you can write
because
to the board.
there is a transgender child going on this field trip, but where is this child going to sleep? I know you can hear me.
I can hear you, but it's not getting broadcast because you're
It
saying
doesn't-
stuff that's
that's not-
potentially
I don't
discriminatory, so I'm not
care.
gonna let you speak anymore. You can please take a seat. Those items are not on the agenda. Thank you.
What do you feel about being cut off and then told that, it's potentially getting discriminatory for you to raise this concern?
Well, I was shocked. I'm not usually at a loss for words, but I was very offended because in no way what I had to say was discriminating against anybody. That's not what I'm about. But I felt that I was treated very, very inappropriately by the chairperson, Willow Richelt. Not just that, but her rudeness towards me and towards the other speakers was just unbelievable. Like I was stunned. Her and Karen were both whispering and talking to each other throughout everybody's speeches and not actually paying attention to what anybody had to say. So it was like, why were we even there when we are not shown any respect whatsoever? People aren't going to be encouraged to come and voice their concerns at a public meeting like this when they're treated so badly.
Well, you raised a good question. Why are you guys there and what power do you have? According to Willow Richelt from a post here you're looking at on Facebook, when a concerned citizen said parents should have ultimate say over what they allow others to teach their kids, Richelt says, sorry, that's not how public education works. The curriculum is set by the Ministry of Education and schools have to follow the Human Rights Code. Parents don't set provincial curriculum and parents don't get to choose or ban learning resources. Parents do have the ability to advocate on behalf of their children and to ask questions and provide feedback. Now, it's not that she's wrong to say that, but when you guys are not getting answers through emails, getting muted in person, it makes you wonder what's the point. And Tanya, you had a question that was a little bit more related to the legalities of all this situation when it comes to the concerns parents are having with these books and even the situation you raised, really. I'm actually going to throw to part of a clip of someone who wasn't able to make it today. It's Dr. Daryl Ferguson, who actually was a former trustee of that board, so they actually know each other. We're going to see how he got shut down during this situation.
And my question is to the superintendent. What legal stance has the superintendent taken in regards to the criminal code? Let me just briefly read. There are strict definitions of times it wasn't considered child pornography.
So I'm turning off your mic. Dr. Ferguson, we're not doing this. There's no illegal material in our schools. That's highly defamatory. No, I'm not going to let you. Sorry. Too bad. No, it's not true. There is no illegal material in our schools. It is not a thing that is happening. So you can have a seat now. Thank you. You can come up. Thank you.
Simple question, and I didn't ask you specifically for a reason because I knew your answer.
So
I'm asking the super, does the district have...
The superintendent is not chairing this meeting. This is a meeting of the board, and I've told you to sit down. Thank you.
Does the superintendent...
People can either obey the rules of order of this meeting or you'll be asked to leave.
can't say we don't care. Does the superintendent understand the legal standing? That's all it is in regards to materials.
None of what you're saying is on the public record because I've turned off your mic, just so you know. Have a seat, Dr. Ferguson.
I love it.
Can you please ask Dr. Ferguson to leave if he will not sit down?
I will not leave, and I just want to finish my question.
This meeting is adjourned temporarily. Thank you.
All right, so your question related to his, but it was a little bit more about the fact that the trustees themselves perhaps don't feel they're at all legally responsible for things that may happen from these materials. Did you want to expand on that?
Right, and that would be because their association, the Trustees Association, has given them information in the School Act under Section 94(1) stating that they're indemnified. So they are believing they're untouchable, but what they need to do is go into the School Act under Section 94(2)(a) and Section 4 and understand that if there is willful misconduct, malicious or willful misconduct or gross negligence, and there's a matter of other things, as well as being in violation of the criminal code, several sections regarding pornography and distributing pornographic material, they can be held personally liable because they first are a citizen of Canada that have to abide by the criminal code and the Constitution. And for some reason, Willow and Karen Bonder seem that, that this doesn't apply to them. And so I'm just there to warn them that they definitely can be held liable and give them an opportunity maybe to research it, talk to a lawyer, because if not, there's very good possibilities that legal actions will be pursued.
Well, it will be interesting to see what happens in the future. These books don't seem to be going anywhere. They seem to be coming out more and more. And I know when you look at the definition of pornography, what exactly is it? I think the gray area there is that they say it's with the intent to sexually arouse someone. But I would argue that children, when they see this, maybe if they haven't had other sexual experiences, that's exactly what these materials do.
I just want to mention one of the books that's in the school libraries. There's a book, this book is at Sardis. When I brought this book called The Bluest Eye to the board's attention in an email.
It's horrible. It's a horrible, I can't believe it's in there.
There was only one book in the Chilliwack district. Now there's two. Now it's at Graham as well. Now this book is a really difficult one to read. The character in this book, who is a pedophile, details his experience in a sympathetic manner rather than appearing as a villain.
Normalizing pedophilia.
Yeah, it graphically discusses many sexual topics, including orgasms, prostitution, incest, rape, nudity, pornography, molestation, pedophilia, masturbation, sexual dreams, homosexuality, bestiality, and sodomy. Do you want to hear one of the excerpts? Am I actually allowed to say that from this?
Well, we'll have to bleep a lot of it, which is interesting. If it's not suitable for YouTube, why is it in schools?
So I'll read a couple of things here. One of them is, "The little girls are the only things I'll miss. Do you know that when I touched their sturdy little and bit them just a little, I felt I was being friendly? If I'd been hurting them, would they have come back? They'd eat ice cream with their legs open while I played with them. It was like a party." Can you imagine a child reading this? This is horrifying for an adult to read this. This is the book that Willow claimed was just fine, but she also admitted at that time that she actually hadn't read it. And I have that screenshot from her Facebook page. The pedophile father expresses how he feels while he rapes his 11-year-old daughter and leaves her laying on the floor unconscious for her mother to find her. But it was okay because he actually covered her with a blanket before he left the room. Horrifying, absolutely horrifying that something like this is in the school system.
Many of the books that are gender identity are far from the highest quality and inappropriate for children in nature, and even promote sexual abuse and incest, such in the
Sorry, I have to interrupt you. That's not correct. They do not promote sexual abuse or incest. That is not true. Yes, I have actually. So no, yeah, that is not promotion. So I'm sorry, I'm not going to let you imply that there are books in our library promoting incest.
Now, something you had mentioned as well is that they had stated that this is a curriculum, and that if we had a problem with it, we needed to either go to the Minister of Education or that we needed to go to the principal of the school or teachers. And the fact of the matter is that this is a learning resource that has been intertwined into all areas of the curriculum, so parents couldn't pull their children out of the class. And the sexual health classes are now being indoctrinated with all of this gender diversity. They're focused on teaching about masturbation and about pornography and about asking kids what gender they are, rather than the biology that they, would be appropriate for them to learn. So I am finding as well, I had a wonderful conversation for about a half hour with Superintendent Rohan afterwards, and I previously have met with the mission superintendent, and what they're doing is they're taking the information that's coming from the school ministry and they're believing it verbatim. And so some of them genuinely believe that when the school board is saying we did a survey and 67% of kids are saying that they are now safer in school, they're being misinformed, because we know that as they manufacture these children into being gender dysphoric, there is a 19 times higher rate of suicide. So if you're going to address this matter, it must be done to the board. And then I'll just finally, if you want to use this portion, in July of 2017, the Minister of Education passed a legislative order that put the onus on the school boards to be responsible for learning resources. And I believe they did that because they implemented SOGI in 2016 in pilot schools. And then by 2017 is when I became involved. A lot of parents were very upset, and they were writing to the Ministry of Education to pull this resource. So they now put the onus on the trustees.
Shift the accountability.
And so what I'm talking about is there's liability, and I'm graciously trying to warn the school board trustees that they could be held personally liable for sexualizing our children and going along with the SOGI 123 resource. And also the board has a duty to listen to both sides. They have a duty that if information is sent to them, and it's very clear information we're sending them, that they have to make a decision, and they have to allow parents the opportunity to voice their concerns and act on them. As I said, there's a lot of concerns about these materials being pornographic. It's been confirmed. This is not only in Canada, but around the world. And the board has an absolute duty to protect the hearts and minds of our children. So my question is, regarding the learning resources, have you considered the indemnification of you each personally have a duty to uphold the criminal code and according to the Teachers Act, Section 94, 2A and 4? Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, this is definitely something I continue to report on many times over. And you know what? I will look for a lawyer who hopefully can speak to this too and shed some light on the situation. If you have just clicked onto this and are mortified at what you just watched, you can search rebelnews.com and explicit books or SOGI 123. I know Action for Canada also has information on there as well. And find out how to get involved in your school district to see if these books are there as well. I'm Drea Humphrey for Rebel News, and thank you guys for being on today.
Thank you.
It's not just sexually explicit books coming for your kids in schools. No, now some school boards in Ontario are also soliciting sexually explicit data on young school-aged children. My colleague Tamara Ugolini set up a website where you can learn all about that and take action to stop it by signing our petition at stopclassroomgrooming.com. Once again, if you want to take action in less than a minute, head to stopclassroomgrooming.com.